In the October 2023 real estate landscape, words like painful, ugly, and anxious are being used to describe the national housing market. Many of us can relate to anxiety that leads to inaction, especially in economic uncertainty. In the real estate and lending industries, we've been hearing clients say they're just going to sit tight and wait and see what happens. Whether you are a first-time home buyer, a seller looking to move up, downsize, or relocate, or an investor keeping an eye on the market, we are here to ensure that you don't get left behind. Our goal is to empower and guide you to make informed decisions rather than freezing up. Being prepared and understanding actionable steps are your best defense. Welcome to this month's Central Coast Residential Real Estate Market Update, when Jen and I and lending expert Darryl Stolz are going to provide some insights, tips on avoiding pitfalls, and some intriguing billion-dollar buzz to wrap up today's episode. So stick around. Jen, take it away.
I'm going to be sharing some residential stats from the California Regional MLS. October of 2023 shows months of inventory has creeped up to 6 months. Since the number of sales is down to 202, there is still a very low number of listings for buyers to choose from. Inventory normally climbs over the holidays and the median price typically dips. However, this last month we saw an increase in the price go to $849,000, which is great news. We have not seen a number this high since May of 2022, and this is also a historical high for our county, which is amazing. Days to sell is still low at just 9, and keep in mind this is just for properties that have actually sold. Overpriced are still sitting and not selling at all, and 55 plus homes and vacant land are taking longer to sell.
It's good to hear that well-priced listings are moving still at a quick pace. Demand continues to remain higher than supply, which does still hold our values. Darryl, I know you had some good tips to share with us today, so why don't you dive into that?
Okay, well, in terms of lending updates, there has been some good news. We've seen interest rates drop about 0.5% in the last month. In fact, they're always changing, but they eased with inflation figures, so that was good news for our business, and that's helping a lot of people who are looking at financing right now. What I was going to jump in and talk about was how to avoid pitfalls. And for most of us that are buying a home or applying for a mortgage, it is a process. And we enjoy the process very much. We think it should be fun and exciting, but it's also emotional. You know, if we can eliminate some of the stress out of going through that home buying process or the process of applying for a loan, well, I'd like to help. Any loan that we look at, you guys already know, a loan is like a four-legged stool. You have income, assets, credit, and property. Those four things typically make up a loan decision. So some of the big things that you can do to avoid pitfalls, we'll start with credit. So if you embark on an escrow, if you do get an accepted offer, refrain from any large purchases and applying for new credit. You can usually still use the credit cards and trade lines that you have open, but it's wise to avoid any large purchases where you apply for new credit, because any new credit inquiry, an underwriter is going to pick up on that, and we have to document any new payments and debt obligations, that type of thing, and that can derail a transaction if you're not careful. So it's really important on our end to inform people of this. You know, another thing with assets, it's important to have your down payment money seasoned. You know, we've talked about it before that the down payment money can be a gift, but when we look at bank statements, any large deposits that are non-payroll, we have to source and paper trail those deposits all the way to escrow if using that down payment money. So if you're moving money around, or if you've recently lent money to somebody else and you're paying them back, or vice versa, or any large purchases and that type of thing. If you're selling a car, for instance, you're going to want to have a bill of sale or an invoice, that type of thing, and then we can document where that money comes from. And it helps to create eligibility for that loan. A really important thing having to do with income is to avoid any job change during the escrow process. Or if you have historically been a W-2 employee and you decide to become self-employed, it's important that you have a 2-year history of self-employment. So those are just 3 things that come to mind in terms of avoiding obstacles and pitfalls, and there are more. But again, it's very important to connect with with your realtors, your lender. The more that you can open up and talk to them, and the more that we get to know you, the more that we can help to insulate you from those things. Sometimes the home that you're buying can have a flaw, or through inspections, that type of thing. So if it does come up, if there is a serious item that could affect health and safety, there are ways of remedying that, whether it be a renovation loan or even private money. There are different solutions out there to help. That's why the inspection process is so important.
Yes.
And you guys are an integral part of that. As a buyer, you really do want to have an agent on your side to help you navigate through that process, to help you negotiate for repairs or things like that when they happen, and to keep your transaction on track.
Great advice. Serena, shall we dive into the $1 billion buzz news?
Sure, Jen. So some of you may have seen the national news where the National Association of Realtors and a few national chains are being sued by some sellers in Missouri, claiming that they weren't aware that their commission would be going to the buyer's agent. It is a $1.78 billion judgment, so they have at this point won, but it is believed that the National Association of Realtors will be appealing that. Darryl, do you have any insight into the future of where that's going?
It's big news. I think it will take years to be settled in the courts. In order for that to proceed, they're going to have to get a bond on that judgment. Typically, a bond is about 10% of the amount of the judgment, so it's not small change.
Right.
It will affect the way that business is done in the future, and it may not look all that different than what it is now, but it could change a little bit. But I do think that the National Association of Realtors will be appealing the judgment, but there are other pending lawsuits that are related to it. So we'll have to wait and see. I think where it stemmed from is that there were real estate companies that were also disgruntled because they had to become paid members of NAR and the multiple listing services. I do think that it would probably help to have more transparency in the industry where, in the current situation, you have a listing agent, typically 5 to 6% commission on the table, and typically that listing agent splits that commission fee with the buyer's agent. There will be more to come from that. I do think that the current system works, and I think it is very important for buyers to have a buyer's agent because things happen in the escrow period, especially through the inspection period, where there can be need for repairs and that type of thing. And without a buyer's agent representing any buyer, but especially a first-time home buyer that might be new to that process, it is important to have a system where you can negotiate for repairs or a seller credit to help cover those repairs after the close of escrow. And without that, I think that would adversely affect the consumer. I also feel that it's hard enough for a first-time homebuyer these days that he or she needs to come up with a down payment, closing costs, but in addition, I think it would be pretty onerous for them to also have to come up with a commission for their buyer's agent. I don't see how that would function so well. I think that would be really hard. I just think it's something that can be addressed better.
I do feel like our contracts in California through the California Association of Realtors does clearly outline for the seller that there's a total commission that goes to the broker's agency, and then there's a portion of that is deemed to be part of the buyer's agent's commission. So it is very well outlined in our contract for a listing agreement in California. I don't know how it is in Missouri, but in California we are definitely covered as far as that goes.
I agree.
Yeah.
And then, like Darryl said, as far as first-time home buyers being responsible for that in addition to the down payment and closing costs, I definitely think it's going to be a limiting factor in pricing the first-time home buyer out of the market.
Definitely.
Yeah, become another barrier to entry.
It is.
But on a more positive note, there is some more billion-dollar news in the local Paso Robles area.
Yes, very exciting news. Dow Estate Wines sold for $900 million to Treasury Estate Winery. And there are performance metrics that they need to meet, but it could ultimately add another $100 million to the purchase to bring it up to $1 billion purchase here in Paso Robles. So that's going to be very interesting to see what this purchase does for our community and our county and our real estate market.
Big news for sure.
Yeah. With that exciting news, we have a very unique market here on the Central Coast. Buyers, there is still time for you to get your new home before we ring in 2024. And homeowners, it's still a great time to sell as we just saw the values go up.
Well, Darryl, thanks so much for sharing your tips on avoiding the pitfalls today and all the other
Pleasure.
information. Thank all of you for tuning in and listening to us. As always, our goal is to empower and guide you to make informed decisions in this current real estate market. And we're here to help, so please feel free to reach out or call any one of us, Darryl, Jen, or myself. And for those of you considering a move to wine country, click the link below and let's begin your exciting journey to your new home. We'll see you next month for another market update. Cheers!
Cheers!